it's okay, I don't mind myth and legend being intertwined, but sometimes we go off on the wrong track. And during the bicentennial, a lot of things kind of happened that was interesting to me. And I want to share them with you, is that there were a lot of myths that have been perpetuated through oral history that we found out were not true. Of 1812. Most people have no clue. Okay, let's talk about flags, for instance. I told you about the Betsy Ross flag. You know the controversy we had currently with the national anthem? Now, but the reason we've had the problems with the national anthem because nobody has understood the story of the national anthem. And I have done this show on Star Spangled Banner at least 4 times, once for IMAX. Now here's the kicker. All these people complaining about the Star Spangled Banner, they don't even know what they're talking about. Most people only know there's 4 verses of the Star Spangled Banner. And what's real interesting to me is that the flag maker, Mary Pickersgill, she was Mary Young Pickersgill. The Youngs were connected to the Rosses, and they all made flags, the family, and they're all from Philadelphia. And when Mary Young Pickersgill made the Star Spangled Banner, it was 40 by 32 feet. At that time, it was one of the largest flags on the planet. But you know, when that flag was hoisted above the ramparts of Fort McHenry before the British arrived, guess who was on the ramparts? African American soldiers. We even know the names of some of them who died. And if we had known better, and we were educated enough, none of these protests would even happen. But because we are silent, we are complicit. You know, Edmund Burke says, how's that go? He said about it's not the people that will do evil that's the problem, it's the people who do nothing about it. And the more that we are quiet and we accept this garbage, the bigger the abyss becomes to climb out. Jefferson obviously said, you know, from time to time the tree of liberty has to be refreshed with the blood of both patriots and tyrants. And my problem with a lot of things is because we are too comfortable. And nothing happens when you're comfortable. Nothing. In fact, you slide backwards. So this is not only true with organizations, it's obviously true with individuals. And that's where America's gone. We are a comfort zone. But we are no longer a liberty zone. A lot of our liberties have been removed from us. You know, the Fourth Amendment, they took it away with the Patriot Act. I don't know if you know that, but in the NDA Act that was signed by Obama in 2012, they can come after you without due process. They can bust into your house, and Congress and the Senate signed off on it. And not 1 ounce of comment or complaint from the American people. They wrote a law that Obama signed that says if we suspect, not we know, not we prove it, if we suspect that you're a terrorist or you're treasonous, we can come into your house and ruin your life first, and then you have to prove it. Where was the SAR? Where was the DAR? Where was all these other, where were the reenactors? Where was everybody when this happened? That's our problem. You want respect? Do I want respect for what I do, for what you do? We all have to take action. The people who walked barefoot on those battlefields at Yorktown to all the way through the war and suffered the way they did it because of the millions yet to come, not for the comfort that we're going to get at the end of the day. So my message to you is that let's find a way to stop being so comfortable. because there's no glory in comfort. There is no reward in comfort. And I'm not saying we have to go be tortured, physically tortured, but we have to learn how to go to the edge and willing to jump to the sake of liberty. Now, what I also find interesting is that, remember when the Make America Great Again hats, the red hats came out? Let me tell you, you know the story of what the red cap is? Without anything written on it? You know the story of what the red cap is? It goes back to Roman times. You know what it means? Now, a lot of patriots in the Revolution wore a knit red cap, sometimes called a toque, but it's a knit cap. And sometimes they just wrote liberty on it. You know what the red cap means? Honestly, this goes back to days of Caesar. Freed slave. I am a freed slave. That's what the red cap means. It's time to put those red caps on and mean it. All of us. We have to invigorate the idea of liberty and be passionate of what the founders were talking about. You know, and I can tell you, for those of us who have gotten uncomfortable and slept on the ground and marched past everything else in camp, there's something magical about it. There's something incredibly magical when you can do something so simple and all of a sudden you feel you're connecting with these people for what they sacrificed. It would be one of the best gifts you could ever give yourselves. Now, so the whole ignorance thing has to come to a stop. We have to find a way. We have to get involved with the school boards. And in a real American way, we probably should get rid of, and I'll just say this, rid of the Department of Education in Washington. We need, was that? For those millions yet to come, you've got to think about what he said. For those millions yet to come. So I'm going to ask you to think. You could not ask for a more treasonous fellow than media. I know I'm in media. Own sources for information. It's out there. There are great, wonderful people, great professionals, and those who are becoming professionals are sharing tons of phenomenal information. I'm going to give you a forecast of something to come. I'm going to give you a forecast. In the not-too-distant future, this country is going to be blown away by the discoveries that are going to come out about what's really happened to this country. You are all going to be shocked. And at first it will not be pleasant. It will be tough. Very, very tough. I already know what's coming down. Not all of it, but I know a lot because of the sources I deal with. But I want to tell you, it's on the way. And we have to go through this cleansing. It's going to get kind of ugly. But we are eventually going to get back to being a Christian nation following the Constitution. That's on the horizon. But the only way we can get from here to there is all of you have to remember those words spoken before Bunker Hill. Now, I just want to share this. I have some videos here. You have these moments where you swear and it just went back. Now, these are little flickers of moments. You know, they don't always happen all the time. But I think the addictive part of living history is that you get the time travel if you're in the right situation. You say, oh my God, that few seconds. And people will invest thousands of dollars and go hundreds, thousands of miles to get that flicker. It is really a spiritual experience. When you get it, and you know when you get it. And sometimes we have it on film sets. When we see something on the monitor, or we see something happen, we say, oh my God, we got it. I mean, that's it. And it just makes your heart race. It's the same type of heart race I had at Yorktown. You know, and we're marching, the drums are beating, and the flags are fluttering. It was just incredible scenery. And then I hear all these horses going. One time we had a cavalry. Our country is in danger, but not to be despaired. You will decide the fortunes of America. On you rests the happiness and liberties of millions yet unborn. Act worthy of yourselves. She made flags, we know that. But if you go to Betsy Ross House today in Philadelphia, you will see that the National Park Service, I don't know if they've done this lately, but they have been doing it in the last 10 years or so, admitting Betsy Ross probably did not design the first flag. And how do we know that? Because that oral history that was handed down, accepted, didn't match historical fact. The dates don't match up, the people don't match up. Sorry about that. Now, where that idea came up was during the first centennial in 1876. Her grandkids, Betsy had died in 1836, but in 40 years later, for the centennial, Betsy's kids or grandkids, they said, my grandmother Betsy was Betsy Ross, and she made the first flag. Well, that whole thing with the circle of stars came into existence. And as we know, even Mel Gibson was flying in the movie The Patriot. Wrong. The maker of the first flag, as far as we know, according to documentation, is none other than Declaration of Signer Francis Hopkinson of Bordentown, New Jersey. He also designed the first seal of the United States. And in both of those, we know that he made 6-pointed stars. Okay, now the significant, now that's called the Espoir. Now the mullet is the 5-pointed star. Now they come into existence, but I was explaining some very interesting ideas of this. Hopkinson also was on the naval board, so he had complete support and authority to create all the designs he felt necessary. Now, if you remove the stripes off this flag, what do you get? You get George Washington's Heckler flag. And the original one is in the New American Revolution Museum in Philadelphia today. In fact, the 6-pointed star is part of the symbol of the American Revolution Museum. And if you go into Monticello, Jefferson's home, you go in the rear entrance. The rear entrance, there's like a small rotunda, really small. Actually, it's almost a little bit larger than this chandelier. And up there on the ceiling, you'll see 18 stars. And 13 of the 18 are 6-pointed stars. The other 5 are 5-pointed stars. So it indicates how the United States got started and the states that were attached as he was in office. So it makes the 18. So, packing up and heading back home from Yorktown, Virginia. 37 years ago, we had the bicentennial of the Battle of Yorktown. We had, I was a living history participant. We had over 5,000 troops there. I camped on dozens of pieces of artillery, and I remember them because they barked day and night. And we also had the tall ships in the Chesapeake there, right off the redoubts, the battlements of Yorktown. But what I really remember about that moment for me was how history was really, really coming alive. I had been a reenactor for about only a year, but this event in particular sent a tremor through me because now I felt that I was taking a time travel experience. Because you gotta understand what happened on this battlefield for the bicentennial. This was a filmmaker's dream, and this was before there was even a History Channel, for goodness sake. So, it was just a lost opportunity for media in general. However, 250,000 people, only 250,000 were allowed each day to get on the battlefield. It's all the National Park Service could handle. On the last day, on the anniversary of the surrender of Yorktown, President Reagan and his entire staff was in a special box to review all the troops that went by. And I remember what a thrill that was. Now, in the box, talk about a small world. In the box, within his staff, was a fellow that would meet 30 years later, well, actually 28 years later, and that was Ron Mann. And Ron Mann was Reagan, one of Reagan's historical advisors. He's also a big collector on George Washington. But Ron and I became fast friends a decade ago. And what's really interesting about Ron, besides being a wonderful gentleman, he remembered being in Yorktown. Of course, I mean, he didn't know who the heck I was because I was one of 5,000 people. But I want to tell you, he remembered it clearly. And I also will tell you, as I get into this, I want to explain where I feel we all need to go that will help your organization, but also help America. Is that the experience I had on the battlefield of Yorktown, and many others after that, was that I felt the thing that we need most of all is we need to be connected to our planet. Now we live off of the thumbs of our devices, but more than ever, Americans are more separated from the planet than in any time ever, and it shows. We are very clumsy outdoors today. I'm not talking about the athletes, I'm talking about the average American cannot function outdoors like we used to, like when we were kids. You know? In fact, I would tell you that at Yorktown, what was really interesting, we obviously had no cell phones, no computers, but all communications were conducted by couriers on horse. If someone wanted to, there were no walkie-talkies. Now, the National Park Rangers had them, but as far as the 5,000 troops, we had to depend on written messages delivered by horse. And what I found was really extraordinary. We were on the battlefield. We were on the battlefield where everything happened. It was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. And at that time, I was 31. I'm close to 70 now. But at that time, with the 5,000 troops, when you marched from point A to point B to get in position for doing the demonstrations, when we marched, in our battalion, we had about 350 militiamen. I was dressed as a rifleman. And the dust clouds. I remember the dust clouds from coming up from marching on the surface of the battlefield. And I remember the sounds while we're marching, the dust coming up. I remember the sounds of the pounding of horse hooves on the ground. I knew a message was coming up. And we had about several dozen men, more than that, maybe 50 men on completely attired well, accurately. Their tack, their saddle, their uniforms, weapons, swords, pistols in front, coming up, delivering a message, and all of a sudden, command to halt, and then they would discuss things, and the next time we get next orders, we move on. And you carried what you're going to carry with you. You had haversacks. If you wanted something to eat, there was no restaurant. So you reach in haversack, grab whatever you're going to eat, whatever, put it back in the haversack. Canteen, you had to have one. It was a regulation, a rule. Every person on the field had to have water source. So canteens were part of this. You didn't go back for a drink of water. There was no such thing. You had your water source. You filled it up in the morning. We slept on the ground in tents. There was no bivouacking off the battlefield. If you wanted to participate, you had to sleep on the battlefield. You cooked your meals at campfires. I was really impressed with that. Now, why am I sharing that with you today? Besides the fact that October is an incredible month to talk about the revolution. Actually, every month is. But October is special because 237 years ago, we had the final major battle and surrender at Yorktown. 4 years earlier, we had the Battle of Saratoga and the surrender about the same time when Gentleman Johnny Burgoyne surrendered to General Gates. That's a real interesting battle. A real hero of Saratoga is Benedict Arnold. Okay? And if you understand what happened in Saratoga, there's a real interesting story about the man who manipulated everything and to the Continental Congress, and that was part of the Conway cabal. And I'll get into that maybe hopefully later. But there's a man's name, and I'll send this over to you. A man's name you got to remember. He was the aide-de-camp to Gates at the time. This is October 1777, and his name is. You know who the aide-de-camp to Gates was? James Wilkinson. Wilkinson will become the greatest trader in the history of American history. He makes Benedict Arnold look like a kindergarten kid. And I have already started efforts to hopefully someday do a major film on him. But Wilkinson does more to take down some of the best names in American history, and I'll get into that. Remind me to get into that, because the short little circle we live in. So anyway, you got Saratoga in 1777. You got 4 years later, your mill comes. 4 years later comes the surrender of Yorktown. So I just want you to know what October is for me, and hopefully in your public events that someday you leave, and has some great landscape resources. The problem is, as a filmmaker, if you're a good one, you realize, if you're really aware of things, you realize our planet, or especially our continent, no longer looks like it did in the 18th century. So there's these little postage stamps of old America that exist. Old growth forests, prairies, which are really, you have to know what you're looking for. One of the things that separates our shows from other people's is that we go to these places where you can see old America. And, okay, so here comes my next secret. Before I committed the crime of jumping and becoming, it looked like is no longer what we have today. So as a filmmaker, I pledge to everyone that not only will the soldiers look right, not only will the story look right, but the landscape will look right. So I go through all these places. I go through these lengths as a filmmaker to find them. But the other thing that I encourage people to kitchen too, but one of the other things I do as a filmmaker is that I look for every piece of authenticity I can get my hands on. And it's not just the reenactors and the talent I work with that are dressed up, but if they're too clean, their uniform gets soiled. And I'm serious, because everyone is too white and too clean in these things. And so but to do this, you really have to know what happened in the Revolution. And I always say that the color white is only white once. That's it. Because after that, they wash by hand, and white will turn kind of this eggshell, then kind of this light gray, and then that's it. And after a while, so anybody who when you see things that are, my complaint about most media on the Revolution is too clean. It's way too clean. The other thing is, it's really hard today to find, and it's getting tougher and tougher, it's hard to find lean people to be 18th century. And I have filmed, if you look at the brochure, I have filmed everybody, just about Hispanics, Native Americans, everybody. And the Native Americans are tough. They are, and I'm not picking on them because my wife is actually part Senegal. But the problem is, this goes back to our being Americans. Most of our lives are no longer authentic. Our food is not authentic. Even our water is manipulated. And so when we look for new talent today, we try to find people, especially, I have a new film that I'm going to be working on, a revolution work.